Welcome to this session of the Boom Project Book YouTube channel. This morning we are going to be talking with one of the authors from the Boom Project, John Limeberry, who is a Louisville native but a late baby boomer. He claims he was too young to remember the assassination of John Kennedy. And so the piece in this book is about growing up in the 60s. He, like many Midwesterners, missed the turbulence of the 60s, either because of age or because of the location in the country. And so John really goes into being a child of the 60s. But this morning, we're going to talk about some of John's other talents. He is a songwriter, and we are really looking forward to hearing some of his recently published work. John, do you have anything to add to that before we hear what you are bringing us to hear?
Right. Well, just to kind of backtrack to music in general and in terms of the part that it's played in my life, because before I started writing in other formats, songwriting was really the first avenue that I explored. And I think that kind of, originates in the fact that I can't remember a time without music. Harry Chapin said music was his oldest friend, and I kind of relate to that. I mean, I can remember, and I couldn't have been more than 3, so it's not a linear memory, but the images are there. Writing in my mother's white Ford Galaxie 500 in the passenger side, no car seat, no seat belts.
Right.
Rebels without a clue. But the magic of the AM radio, through all of the power line interference and the thunderstorm static, I can remember Petunia Clark singing Downtown, and I was just kind of, mesmerized. And so it grew on from there, and then trying to find an avenue by which I could participate in music. I have a very average voice, not great tonal quality. Have a pretty good range, so I can put something down and think, when an actual singer gets a hold of this may not be half bad. I am an average musician, but I know theory fairly well, so I can combine chords both on guitar and piano. And so I tried to just kind of play to my strengths, such as they are, because I was never going to sing better than the next person, and I was never going to play better than the next person. But maybe, I had a shot at writing some that could actually get someplace. So the story behind this song that we're going to hear, I'd written kind of a traditional country song called Sugar Daddy that had been signed by a Nashville publisher named Scotty Turner. And fortunately for me, at the same time he signed my song, he was also producing the debut album for a duo called Little Memphis. And so I kind of had a step in the door there. And so my song ended up being the second track on their debut album. Ooh. So
great. So let's hear it if you're ready. Kim, you want to cue us up?
Assistant is totally impressed, and you're going to be really impressed in a minute.
Another Saturday, he picks her up, and they head off to town in his pickup truck. She plays the radio just a little too loud, and all the town folk know, 'cause she rolls the windows down. He's just another sugar daddy, and it comes as no surprise whenever she feels another sugar daddy. Down at the Fountain Square, they cause a scene. This older gentleman and his little queen. A lady stops and stares as they Eskimo kiss. And she says, I do declare, I've never seen a sight like this. He's just another sugar daddy, and it comes as no surprise. Whenever she feels lonely, he's there to try to rise. Have a piece of candy, he's just another sugar daddy. He don't care what people say, 'cause he knows their love is true. He just treasures every day like all grandfathers do. He's just another sugar daddy, and it comes as no surprise. Whenever she feels lonely, he's there to try to rise. Have a piece of candy, he's just another sugar daddy. Have a piece of candy, he's just another sugar daddy. Oh yeah, he's just a sugar daddy.
Nice.
Wow, that was wonderful. And I think the lyrics are just great. Is there something else you want to elaborate on about this song? Where do you find inspiration, or who are some of your favorite songwriters? What, or do you just say, I've got to write a song, or you hear it in your head first, or you hear it as a poem first?
Well, I mean, and ask a dozen different people who write, and you'll get a dozen different kind of things.
Sure.
I typically start with the idea that oftentimes is the title as well. It wasn't in this case. What I did was to sit down to start to write a song about the grandfather-grandchild dynamic. And typically the way you would do that is you would sing from the child's point of view, and you would talk about the grandfather experience, and then the grandfather would pass away, and then you would have the child looking back on the experience, or something that holds. Actually, I wrote that song as well. I'll circle back to that in a second, but in this one, I was just playing with ideas, and the idea of the grandfather giving the grandchild candy, and then you start going through M&Ms, Reese's, and I think sugar daddies, and that's when kind of the aha moment happened, because obviously you have the double entendre with sugar daddy with kind of the adult relationship, and so what I wanted to do then was to build verses where either path would work. They would be applicable in either situation. And then in the bridge, introduce the fact that it's a grandfather-grandchild relationship. So at that point, you kind of have to write the bridge and then work backwards so that everything lines up, so that the lyrics, once again, kind of work in either scenario. And even better if the listener is thinking in the more adult category and then gets hit with the fact that it's the grandfather in the bridge, then that's good as well. But
Can you talk a little bit about the bridge?
yeah, in terms of song structure, and this is one of the things that when I listen to stuff by newer writers that sometimes they don't quite have yet. Is just understanding song structure and the components and how to use them. And there are exceptions to the rule and those kind of things. But essentially, you're dealing with a verse, a chorus, and a bridge. Chorus is the repeated part of the song, typically the part of the song where you find the title, typically either the first line or the last line, or both the first and the last line if you're doing a bookend chorus. The verses provide more detail and right toward the chorus. And the bridge then is a third section unto itself. And the one thing that I would stress, though, is that you don't have to have a bridge. So if you don't write a bridge just to have a bridge. But if there is something lyrically that you can bring to the song, or if you want to kind of change it up musically, then the bridge obviously works. And so in this case, because I needed a segment that was going to obviously identify the characters as grandfather, grandchild, then the bridge worked well. So that's kind of the component kind of thing. The other grandfather song that plays the more typical, I did a co-write with just an outstanding musician, a regional artist named Jeff Barnes, and he had come up with this kind of chord progression, and I needed to lay lyrics over the top of it. And it does follow the more typical kind of approach. I think the first verse is, I'd watch the Mississippi River from my grandpa's balcony on those lazy summer days when him and me would play checkers in the twilight and drink up his sweet tea as the muddy water rolled to the sea. That's the setup of the first.
Beautiful.
And that's on YouTube. So folks, once you finish this, Jeff Barnes' Dreamer is the name of the song if you want to take a listen to that. But yeah, so that's kind of the pathway for each of those.
Thank you, Kim. I did not hear your question to John that elicited that answer. So I would like to know what you asked him. And then I wondered if you had other questions as well.
Well, yeah, I had one. Do you want me to ask now or later?
Go ahead.
Okay. I know this is odd for you people who are watching this. I'm sure you don't want to hear it. So anyhow, I'm curious because John's written a lot about music, actually. And in fact, on our Medium publication, Landslide Lit, he has a piece.
Right.
That's wonderful, kind of lyrical,
Yeah.
Which is no coincidence.
Yeah, I suppose there's connection there. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, how is this really different from writing prose? Right.
Well, I guess I would say, and number one, I would speak from the fact that when I think of writing prose, it really is the novel format that to which I'm drawn. And in that case, I think that you're really, the big difference, I guess, is scope. Because with songwriting, you train and drill yourself to get everything finished in 3 minutes. So you've got to be extremely concise and precise. And you have to be able to justify every line in terms of moving that story forward. The novel obviously is a total different animal. And I resisted starting for a long while because of that. And I don't know if that was, good or bad. I'm torn between the everything has its season into the spectrum, and that we really all should be writing like we're running out of time. And so, so I held off on doing that. But once I got into the groove, it's just a matter of, number one, you're dealing with, in most cases, many more characters. So you have, many more details that you can add in and of those things. But it comes with its own set of risk and problems, in terms of, you don't want to contradict what you said on page 15 on page 215, those kind of things. So, yeah, but for me, I think it's just a matter of scope and getting out of that kind of shrunken format into a much more, wider atmosphere where you can paint more, at least more longer narratives in terms of description and those types of things.
Excellent. What if somebody came to you and really had a desire to become a songwriter, what advice might you have for them? There's certainly not as much how to videos and literature out there for songwriters. So what would you say to a novice songwriter?
I mean, it's become much more difficult just because the whole industry has kind of, shrunken. When I first began, and especially even with getting a foot in the door with Little Memphis, there were lots of little independent publishers and labels that you could kind of use as a stepping stone to the next level. Those are almost all gone. And so, it really is a process now where, and even the album format is kind of wavering, it's all about singles, and it's all about downloading that one song that you want. And so it is more difficult to get in, to get through all of the gatekeepers. There are some good organizations, NSAI, Nashville Songwriters Association International, is something I would at least check out. It's a little pricey. I forget what their yearly dues would be right now, but it does give you access to actual major publishers. And the other thing, again, like we were talking about song structure, the other thing is just to make sure that you have those elements down, kind of like the songwriting 101, before you move forward. Now, if a person just wants to write songs for themselves, God love them, go for it, do anything you want. But if you're trying to publish in a professional market, there are some rules to the game, and it's like anything else. Once you're in the game, you can do anything you want, because now, but getting in the game, you kind of have to show that you know the fundamentals. I guess one other thing I would note that I hear with newer writers is that there's not, melodically, there's not a big differentiation between the melody in the verse and the melody in the chorus. The chorus sounds a lot like the verse, and you want to make sure that you have that distinction, that the chorus is kind of, everything, you want everything to be as memorable as it can, but that the chorus kind of jumps and at least kind of propels itself away from what you've set up in the verse, which, again, the function of the verse is to basically set up the chorus anyway. So, yeah.
The chorus seems to be the most memorable part, or the part that people repeat, or that part that becomes an earworm.
Right. It is, yeah.
You mentioned the novel, and are you working on a novel? Do you have a preference? Do the genres balance one another in your writing life, or?
Well, I haven't done that much, but how I spent my pandemic basically is I finished a piece, which is going out to agents now, but the Jeff Barnes, the individual with whom I wrote Dreamer, and Jeff is great. Jeff will say, "I'm not a reader, but here's an idea. You go write this book," and so he came up with this idea of, and this was before COVID, okay, but the idea was that there was a certain book or text which spread this disease, and he had a few characters in mind, and so when I ran with that, the basic storyline that it basically evolved into was a would-be serial killer using Aztec mysticism to spread this bloodborne pathogen, and so I mean, it grows as you move through, but yeah, I mean, I'm not, and once again, I don't consider myself an authority on how to write a novel, but but I also, at this point, am not really tied to any particular genre. It's just whatever, once again, whatever idea kind of makes its way, from the ether or wherever those things are, to then kind of, and again, once you have the idea, then it's just filling in the gaps
Right.
to get from A to B to C.
And eventually to Z, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
We know that you teach for the Kentucky Community College, Community and Technical System in Louisville. Am I correct? In
Yes.
Jefferson County. What do you teach songwriting as well as other English courses there?
Well, I teach history and sociology of rock music. So within that, we don't really do. I mean, it's not a songwriting course, but we do talk about song structure because I want my students to be able, when they speak about music, to talk about, in the bridge it does this, as opposed to, that part of the song where it says, so
Yeah.
I want them to approach it in a more professional manner. And so I have that course, and then I have a public speaking course which doesn't specifically apply to the pop culture end of things, but that's essentially where we are.
Well, good luck with your novel. And I will be going directly to YouTube, as I'm sure Kim will, to hear the dream song. Is there anything else you would like to share with us about your journey in songwriting? And then I would like to turn it over to Kim to ask anything she has or would like to say.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, it's just been it's something I've never known a time when music wasn't a part of my existence, and so it's hard to think of a time when that won't be so. It's just a matter of trying to grow within the concept of what you're doing. Because but we all hear voices, and so it's just a matter of trying to put them in an organized fashion so that they're going to make sense to somebody else when they hear those words. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Kim?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm gonna lean in. So what occurred to me, so this is country. All right.
Yes.
And of course, country is famous for ballads and telling stories, and as is blues, probably as much or more, my thinking is, than a lot of genres of.
Kim, we need you to move in a little bit. All we can see is your arm, and we would like to see.
All we need to do is hear me, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
There's a song like that.
Yes.
Touch me. Okay, so here I am. I'm saying this is country music, and it's famous for its storytelling. And I'm saying that's, for me, blues is that way too. And I wanted to know if he agreed with that, and if that's the reason, or one of the reasons, he was attracted to this genre in the first place.
Yes. I the kind of the famous 3 chords and the truth line about the music. I do think that's true. I think that because with especially with mainstream rock, because so many times rock is really instrumentally based, and so it may be more about the guitar riff than necessarily what's being said. And for the most part, country music has kind of stayed story centered. Now it's veered off that just recently, maybe in the last decade. It's veered off that a little bit, kind of electronic drums and synthesized hands clap. It's disco without the whimsy, but it sells. So in the end, it is music business. I've met with publishers, pre-COVID, who keep telling me, the actual songs are going to come back. It's just you just hang in there. So we'll see. But but there are, when I think of my favorite songwriters, though, I mean, they are more from the rock side of the aisle. And of course, my fan favorites are different than my critical favorites, which are kind of the usual suspects of Lennon, McCartney, Dylan, Paul Simon,
yes,
right?
yes.
But my fan favorites, Jim Steinman is just head and shoulders above everyone, and unfortunately we lost him earlier this year. But he wrote Total Eclipse of the Heart. He wrote Making Love Out of Nothing at All, Holding Out for a Hero, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, and then probably more famously, he wrote everything on the Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell, and then Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell too. So just this great over the top, cliche driven, but in a good way, turn of a phrase kind of thing, energetic music. And then I've always kind of been attracted to power pop. So there was in the 70s a songwriting duo named Mike Chapman and Nikki Chin, who had a whole stable of artists, Sweet, Susie Quattro, early Pat Benatar, a great band called Smokey, Smokie, who never really broke through in the States, were really big in Europe. But once again, you can find them on YouTube. So once you've watched Jeff Barnes' Dreamer, then try a couple of Smokey tunes. And then I think, especially growing up where I did, because I was in Southern Indiana until I was about 10, and then we moved a couple hours north of Indy, which is just obviously total Midwest territory. So those great Midwestern bands of the late 70s and early 80s, REO Speedwagon with Kevin Cronin, and once again, the late, great Gary Richrath doing most of the writing, and Styx with Dennis DeYoung and Tommy Shaw. And so, in terms of, from a fan perspective, I kind of keep coming back to that list.
Information. I'd say that's good information for our listeners.
Absolutely.
And
And fascinating.
very good information, and for me too. I'm going to pay much more attention to song lyrics now. So I think this has been wonderful.
Great, thank you very much.
Coming all this
Yes,
way to
sure,
talk
no
to us.
problem.
Yes.
Thank you
Yep, good to see you.
for your candor. Thank you for all of this. So we'll be very interested to continue watching what you're doing and keep us informed.
Sure.
He's helped color our world.
Absolutely.
The 70s outside of Chicago.
That's
That was
right.
me.
That's
So
right.
anyhow, goodbye everyone. this has been great fun. As you can see, we just have fun.
Yes.
So now we're going to say
See you next time.
next time.